The Four Nights of the Apocalypse, Chapter 142, A Sad Misunderstanding. Lunchtime happy hour. And for Xana there was nothing tastier than a wild boar grilled in salt, while for her sister the mutilating rabbit stew was so creamy that she confessed she could eat it all day. But while the giant sisters gorged themselves, Belt danced in the face of danger, saying that eating like that would make them fat. And this comment makes Xana so angry that she threatens her brother, saying she'll beat him up. But the boy is undeterred. But soon they also end up feeling the absence of their mother. According to Zillion, she went out to talk to Tyra. And Diane called Tyra to talk because she was worried after noticing that her daughter was acting a little strange. And now knowing more or less why, she asks, "What are you thinking about now? Are you wondering if Nations is the son of your mother and father? You think he could be a brother to all of you?" And the little fairy replies, "I've heard rumors that Mom and Dad's first son was the victim of a changeling. That's why Daddy punished Puck and forbade him to do it again. I just didn't give it much thought, because I thought it was just a rumor. But 2 years ago when I met Nations in the fairy kingdom, I was shocked. Because he looked a lot like Mom and Dad." However, Diane quickly asks, "But it's only our faces that look alike, isn't it?" And Tyra quickly replies that it's not just that. Nations have no gender, just like Feo. How many other humans are like that? And only fairies and giants can adapt to the air of the fairy kingdom. And on top of all that, I discovered something else too. Nations was also abandoned when he was just a baby. And today he is exactly 18 years old, the same age as Myrtle. And after hearing all this, Diane can only say, "Let's pretend for a moment that you're right and that Nations is your brother. Would that be bad for you?" And without having to think too much, Tyra promptly replies, "Of course not, because I love Nations very much." However, the fairy with her eyes full of tears also says, "But what about Myrtle? How would he be? Would he no longer be Mom and Dad's son? Would he no longer be our big brother? I don't want that to happen, because it would be very difficult for all of us." Tyra can't accept it and flies away, leaving his mother behind. At that moment, not only Diane, but also Feo was in shock after hearing everything that had been said. And the fairy Mom and Dad were overjoyed at the return of their baby. And they thanked Prince Myrtle and Sixtus, because it was thanks to both of them that everything ended well. Although Sixtus said he had done almost nothing. And they were also happy that Puck and the baby had recovered quickly. And on the way home, Sixtus asks if Myrtle has heard when they call him their guardian angel. However, the boy says that he didn't want to be an angel, but a giant or a fairy. Myrtle also comments on the conversation they had earlier. However, Sixtus says that he doesn't need to say any more. He goes on to say, "I know what you're looking for. Let's go talk to Dad and ask him for the ancestral elixir so you can drink it." But on the way home, Myrtle asks again, "I don't have wings to fly like a fairy, and I'm not big and strong like a giant. All my siblings look like Dad or Mom in some way, but I'm the only one who doesn't look like them at all. So if there's one thing that would make me your brother, it's the ability to adapt and live in this kingdom." But even so, Myrtle wonders if her father would give her something so precious. But then Sixtus remembers, "It wasn't you who said that father was the kindest king of all." However, seconds after saying this, Sixtus is surprised by what he sees when he reaches the top of the tower. Myrtle, who was just behind him, didn't understand why he was paralyzed and perplexed like that. Until he too looked up with his own eyes. Why are Dad and Nations together? What are they doing? Was the question that both Myrtle and Sixtus were asking themselves at that moment. The king of the fairies looks up and says, "Listen to my voice, Orium Vine. Deliver the tears of Eris hidden in the light to my hands." And in King's hands was the ancestral elixir, which was extracted from the flower of Eris that only grows at the top of the sacred tree once every millennium. And according to King, it dispels all kinds of illnesses and curses and brings a dying person's soul back to their body. A few meters away from the two of them were Myrtle and Sixtus, who were surprised that the elixir really existed, but also surprised to see what was happening there. Myrtle, desolate and overcome by a bad feeling, repeated a single word, "Father? Father?" At that moment, right before his eyes, he grasped Nasion's hand and handed him the ancestral elixir. That was the king's gift to Nasions, and the fairy king wanted him to accept it wholeheartedly. And witnessing this scene, hearing those words from her own father's mouth, leaves Myrtle in a state of shock. And Sixtus can't understand why his father would give a fairy's hidden treasure to a human? Myrtle, for her part, can no longer bear the situation and decides to leave. Meanwhile, King asks Nasions not to be so shy, as his only intention is to help him in some way, and that elixir could probably awaken the gentleman of the prophecy. Nasions thanks the king for his kindness, but it wasn't right for him, so he refuses the gift. And King wasn't expecting this response from Nasions. "If you've had this kind of medicine all this time, why didn't you tell me before? And why are you only giving it to me now? It was so much fun watching me run through the forest to make medicine only to fail every time." And even though King tried to say that he could explain, Nasions kept saying, "And what annoys me the most is how you, the king of the fairies, are so senseless. Because if you were a real father, you should know who really needs this elixir." And outside, near the entrance to the fairy kingdom, we can see the wizard Kilbegan, who reveals that he feels a deep dark feeling of anger and despair manifesting itself and growing very quickly. And for him it could undoubtedly be very useful. The sad misunderstanding between father and son causes a rupture in the solid family bond. The awakening of a dark feeling puts the fairy kingdom at risk. Continued in the next chapter entitled A Tragedy.